So I want to show you today about how to begin further. So I am going to lay out some paint. I'm going to paint this picture on a toned canvas. I put some newspaper down, anything you really want to protect from the paint. So if you don't have palette paper, which y'all got in your kit, maybe this size, maybe smaller, use freezer paper. Freezer paper is great, and it's cheaper. So you might have to tape it down, especially since it's at the end of the roll. So rather than that, I will just pull up some paper. All right, I've got my water, and I'm going to haul out some brushes and some paints. My satin glazing. A palette knife to mix paint with, actually two. And I'll bring in a variety of brushes. The brushes you use or choose becomes very personal to you. There's the white Taklon brush, which is very soft, and then we have what are generally called hog bristle. I don't know if they're really hog bristles anymore, but they imitate a hog bristle. So I happen to like flats and rounds, so I'm just going to pull out those. One thing that's not in your kit that I do recommend is a tube wringer. And what the heck is that? So when my paint tube gets down to the bottom, just use this and it squeezes all the paint to the top, saves you money. All right, I got a couple of rags. So I look at my picture, I'm thinking about what I'm going to be painting. I think I'm going to choose the ultramarine blue. Then I want a light yellow. Definitely need some white, and I'm going to make this green some burnt umber and yellow ochre. So that's what I'm going to start laying out. Before I have enough here. Yeah. All right, what I'll do is I'll just lay them up here. Oh, there's my yellow ochre. And blue. There's my ultramarine. And I've got a couple of whites. There's a reading for you on the different kinds of whites there are. There's the titanium white and a zinc white. And hopefully you'll find I'm going to bring out my retarder. Remember, that slows the drying time. I know this is really boring to watch. This is what you do. Go in, read your paint. And I need my burnt umber. Burnt umber. So I've got my yellow ochre, my burnt umber, which is the brown, the ultramarine blue. There's one of my whites, another white. Trying to use this up that I've had for a long time. I don't need that. I got 4 yellows here and a green. What else did I say I was going to pull out? I got my yellow ochre, my green, got my brown, my whites, my blues, my yellows. I'm good to go. The only other thing I might pull out, and if I had it here in my school kit, would be dioxazide violet, which I wrote about for you. It's the best purple in the world. Yes, it'll immediately make your paints go darker. So many students, when you get this palette paper, tend to use like little tiny corners. Half sheet's good, and there is a traditional way of laying out your colors from the whites, the yellows, all around, just like the rainbow. I used to keep pliers in my toolkit too. so I could open my tubes of paint. There it is, nicely squeezing out that paint. Use that yellow light, yellow medium and yellow light. Oops. There, got it open. Now don't use your teeth unless you want dental bills. Everybody's got dental bills unless you want more dental bills. Now I did put the green out. I never use this green straight from the tube. To me it's a very plastic color. The only things in real life that green is made out of is plastic garbage cans. I'm going to pull out a little red. Because I like making oranges and putting them with my green. It makes a more interesting green. So as I said before, I'm not going to use that straight from the tube. Ooh, I'm lucky today. So I've arrayed my paints in a semicircle. I'm going to make this a little easier to see over. I always have my beverage. It's best if you drink when you paint, you have a cap on it because you'll be drinking your paint water. All right. Now where am I going to begin? I'm going to move this over a little bit. I'm going to be painting on a canvas today. So canvas has got wood stretcher bars. It's stretched around something. And I'm using an easel. Generally in my studio, I can show you pictures. I never have used an easel in my painting practice. I've only painted up against the wall, put a nail in the wall, hang it, or I have plastic on a wall, and I have milk crates that I paint on. So now I'm mixing some color. I'm going to mix that very light, bright yellow that I have. Also, I've got a toned canvas. I painted the canvas with something beforehand, generally for landscape, a vermilion. So vermilions are red-orange. Why? Gives you a kind of bounce to begin with. You've got something going. It's nothing to be scared of. So lots of times people are scared of that white canvas, or they think they don't need to cover the whole canvas. Well, this way you'll see all that little color coming from underneath poking out. All right. So my paint is liquid enough that I didn't need to add any medium to it. Remember, the medium changes it from what comes out of the tube from a lotion, or it comes out of the tube like a paste sometimes. A paste comes out, and you add the medium, so it goes from a paste to a cream to a lotion. Changes the viscosity. So you can see already, I've got some color on here. And you can immediately see there's a bounce to the color. The colors are now really talking to each other. At least I think so. All right. So I don't have to change my water all the time. Generally, wipe off the paint first and then rinse it with water. I'm going to go some blue now. And if I don't want to contaminate my little pile of white here, I'm going to just pull some aside with my palette knife to another area. Now this is a little stickier. And how you like to paint is really, and how you like the viscosity of your paint is really an individual and extremely personal thing. It's like brushes. Do you like soft brushes or hard brushes? Most of the time you have no idea. Let's see. We're going with some blue. I guess I'll put some of the blue here. And sometimes I might start with an underpainting, and that's what this might be. You start one place, and then it's all about the relationship and the adjustments you make as you go along. So you start with one idea, and slowly your painting starts having a conversation. If you listen well enough, it'll tell you what it needs. So I drew onto the canvas beforehand some charcoal. I also put a little spray fixative on it, one because I was going to take it somewhere. I did it in my studio and I brought it here, and I didn't want it to come off or get dirty. The other thing is, when you paint, then if you put a little spray fixative on your charcoal, then it won't mix with your paint, which is really important if you're doing yellows and whites. You could end up with grays, dirty things. And some people don't like dirty paint. So now, with this painting, I'm not totally mixing my paint. I might come on with a different value. The paint is still wet. I'm not sure if you can see. I can still push around what I just did. Generally, the retarder will help you and the medium will help you. I generally make very fast decisions on paint. I generally make fast decisions anyway. But with painting, then it's easier. Then my paint is always going to be workable. So I still have my picture. I have my picture I've drawn. The picture I've got hanging on the wall that I keep referring to. Darker. So how am I going to make that darker color with what I have? I generally don't use black. What am I going to use? Well, I'm going to use a little burnt umber. One of my favorite colors is Payne's Gray. And if you don't want to go buy it, a good way to make it, you can either make it with ultramarine blue and black or burnt umber and ultramarine. Almost becomes a black. One thing that's great about acrylic oil, you can just make a mistake, you don't like what you've done, just paint over it. Not so true with watercolor. I generally don't use black at all when I paint. I find out there are ways to make interesting darks or blacks. Like that burnt umber. And you learn about complements. Complements will give you great darks too. Any questions? So I'm switching brushes from the flat to a smaller round. And this is a hog bristle. So I thin the paint a little with the medium. I can get it nice and thinner application, and then but it becomes more transparent. So I'll probably have to go over that a few times, but I can get a nice thin line with it. If you like to use thin paint, and it's really fluid, there's something called fluid acrylic. You don't have to put medium in it. It's already very thin, but it's expensive. But no medium required. It is packed with pigment. All right. So I wanted a darker blue, but I still want it to look blue, so I'll take that same mix of the burnt umber and the ultramarine, and now I've got a darker blue. There's darker blue areas. And they're blended, so I might take yet another brush that has no paint on it, flat hog bristle, and blend those two together. You can scrub the heck out of them. So I might put a little more blue over this, because right now it appears gray. So that what I put on there earlier, I can still push around. And I have started putting in a little bit of medium as my paint begins to dry. Let's see. And I don't wear a mask. I stick my brushes in my mouth, so I can't do that now. So I just put a little more blue on there. Still just pushing it around. Looking for that blue color there. So almost nothing I use is straight out of the tube. Everything's a mix. So we can only go so far at a time with pushing the paint. The paint will begin to scumble. It will start to curl up as you try to push it and make lumps, so you just move on. Either move on to another area or so this is just all about how to begin. I identified strong areas, began there, the blues, the whites, the yellows, and now I'm just beginning to blend the heck out of it. Let's see. I like it when if I want to blend a lot, I like it when my brushes are dry. Have not had any water on it. Just changes the texture of the brush, as you'll begin to find out. Yeah, really good sound. You can hear the way the hog bristle works. You can hear the scrubbiness and how hard those bristles are. And I've scrubbed it out pretty thin. Definitely needs another application. All right. All right. Now I need more white. Always need more white. No, I'm talking to the camera, but I do often talk to myself while I'm cleaning. I recommend it. Kind of not about how your day's going, but is that what I wanted to put there? It's like you're constantly evaluating how it's going. This is a subject that I really like. I didn't talk a lot about that. I used to do plein air painting, which is painting outdoors, out in the fresh air. French term from the Impressionists, I believe. And it's one of my favorite places to paint. It's called Mountain View Cemetery in Oakland. We've got everything there you could want. They have 3 reservoirs, and I've done many paintings from photographs, from being there. Always talking to myself. I kind of like that blending that's happening there. When it's a little drier, I'm going to have to put in yellow over it. If I put the yellow over it in this section where I see that yellow coming through reflection, I'm going to get a little green. This yellow and this blue make a kind of green. See, I'm messing up my tree lines. Oh, I'm going to go back in that. Because the one thing that's easy is that the burnt umber and the blue is a pretty opaque color, and it'll cover. And why did I put it in ahead of time? It's kind of a placeholder. Hog bristle brush, you can maybe hear. Kind of sounds like brushing your teeth. Kind of stiff bristles. One thing that putting the vermilion color underneath is when you put a blue on top, you get this kind of silver, and blue and white, you get a kind of silvery look to the blue. It's kind of nice. So I'm really poking it in, trying to get it into those, warp and the weft of the canvas. Back to the yellow. Sometimes students ask me what size of brush. What's the best brush to buy? Best brush to buy is what feels good to you painting. And in the beginning, you need to paint a bit before you know what feels good. And different brushes give different effects. There's that scrubbiness of the bristles. I do have a little thin one that's dry. You might have seen I dipped my brush in the water just to sort of lubricate it. I don't want a lot of water in there. Remember? Putting too much water in breaks down the paint. It'll crack and craze and won't mix properly. Oh, I can go in and put my yellow. So I'm just testing. How wet is that? Perfect, I'm not getting the green. How many more dry brushes do I have? The paint is still thin, so I'm still getting a bit of that orange come up, the vermilion from underneath. And every so often, stop a minute. What the heck have I done? Get back a few feet. And analyze it. See where you got to go next. What is that? Lots of white with some yellow. So also, I don't blend all my colors perfectly. That's just not the kind of painter I am. I like a little variation in the color as it's gone on. There's yellow here with a little more white in it or a little less. Nothing's going to appear totally flat color. So even though I did put some medium in there, my paint is drying pretty fast. So when I go back to an area, so one thing about acrylic and how fast it dries can be helpful. It's a little more helpful for students. Unless it's the hot summer and you just barely put your paint out and it dries. I'm doing the same painting in oil. They're not going to look the same. Not because one's oil wasn't. You want it one day, one another day. Depends on how I feel. Whites. Whites with blue. Almost not dry enough there. That is good to go. Sometimes you just get another tool to help you. The fingers. Fingers make really good clouds too. There's not a lot of paint on my brush right now. Just enough. Oop. Sometimes I'll just point in my canvas and locate where I am. That'd be dark. All right. Just for a change of pace, sometimes you also want to know the gestalt. What's happening in the entire painting? And for that, you can't just work in one area, get it perfect, because then it won't match the rest of it. So I'm going to work on my yellow ochres, bringing in here, and some of the green. Where'd my yellow ochre go? Oh, here it is. Just so I get a sense of what's happening in the rest of this picture. Sometimes you're learning as you paint. So if you started at the top and worked to the bottom might feel like a completely different painting because you learned something as you were going. So what does that mean? Well, if you want the painting to work, you got to go back into where you started. Some people get looser as they paint, and some people get much tighter. I tend to get looser as I paint. So my yellow ochre is going on much thicker because I put it out when I started, and even after, what have I been painting? 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It starts to skin over and it's getting firmer. Now I'm gonna mix some green. So I took that, oh boy, that really did skin over. One of the things that you can do when you are painting with acrylics is you can get a little tiny like mister, a spray bottle, and just mist some water onto it. Now I did tell you that Viridian or phthalo green, either one, are really very plasticky colors, but they are the most beautiful mixing colors, which you'll find out from your color chart. When you're using an easel, unless you stick it on the edge, part of the painting will be stuck under that little rim. You can always use your talent knife. Now you just scrape up the remaining paint on your palette. Then put it on your canvas. You can whoosh it around with your knife, or just put it on and then whoosh it around with your brush. All right, next, I'm going to get my brown on there because that's the other significant color that is not in there. So my brown is my burnt umber. I wear an apron, so I get less paint on me. Doesn't mean I don't get paint on me, because I am a slob. Just helps a little bit. Unless you wash out acrylic paint immediately, you will have it dried as plastic on your clothing. So I'm still just defining all the areas that I have in the painting. The dark browns of the trees. Oops. Brown to blue. So I've basically got the color palette I want. I like the blending that's going in here between my yellows and blues. I'm going to work a little more on that. I'll reintroduce my browns, my blue, black, my quote black, which is my blue and my brown, into the trees, lighten up the trees. But I've got to let everything on here firm up a little. Got to let it dry. All right? Thank you.